Nice to have you on, wherever you may be, listening to the sound of my dulcet tones all across North America. Love to get you in. We're going to talk a little medical information right now, and always great to have on board one of North America's best cardiologists. I've got Dr. Fahmi Farah on the line with us, and we're going to talk about heart health and what you can do to make sure that you keep that thing going. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, once that thing doesn't go, you're done. And that's why you got to be very proactive with things that are going on in your life. And, Doctor, it's really great to have you on board. You know, I was just reading an article in the New York Post that says, well, do you have a tough job? And the study says, well, in case you do, it might be time to find a new one, because if you do, it might save your life. Stressed out male workers, and when a female as well, who feel underappreciated could be twice as likely to develop potentially deadly heart disease, according to that paper that was published in the Journal of the American Heart Association. Wanted to get your thoughts on that. We're going to go down some of the list here of these jobs, but direct correlation, right? More stress on the job, the greater proclivity towards heart disease, I would imagine, right? Welcome to the show.
Hey there, it's great to be back on your show, Willis. Yes, absolutely, there is a direct correlation. Stress is a risk factor for heart disease, so stress anywhere would have a similar impact, and job, of course, is no different.
Okay, absolutely. Where do you find the balance with all of this? I've read that some say, well, stress is actually a good thing, but if it's held in check. So do we all need stress at some point in our life? How do you see that overall?
Well, I think it would be very difficult to avoid stress. You know, we are all stressed out at some point in our lives. Especially, you know, at workplace is a huge source of stress. So I can't say that stress is a good thing necessarily, although it is impossible to avoid it entirely. But yes, stress is a risk factor for heart disease, because it just, when we're stressed out, it just does a number of things. It releases some pretty, you know, damaging hormones and chemicals in our body that can affect our heart and, of course, vascular system in general. Blood pressure is usually elevated, heart rate runs high, and that stress can trigger a couple of other things as well, like, you know, forming blockages and putting people at risk of having a heart attack.
All right, absolutely. And from that standpoint, how important is it to maybe self-evaluate? In other words, if somebody's going through a very stressful day or a week and it turned out to be a month or more, should somebody maybe take priority and say, okay, what am I doing in this job? Maybe time for a little self-reflection if the days of stress keep going on day after day after day.
Yes, I think balancing is very important. If somebody is very stressed out at their work, they need to identify what that stressor is at work and talk to their higher-ups and find out a balance, whether it is the number of hours or the amount of responsibility they have. They definitely have to identify what that source is and work on it.
All right, very good. I'm looking at the list here that is in the article in the New York Post, and they've got bartender as the top one, as the most stressful job out there, being a bartender. Number 2 is going to be a teacher. Number 3 is going to be a sports referee. So what are your thoughts on that? Maybe the bartender leading the list, then teacher, of course, I can understand. But sports referee, that is high on the list as well. What do you think about those 3?
I think they sound pretty stressful to me. I mean, a sports referee, I can only imagine they have so much on them. They're having to monitor, and, you know, they just have a lot going on all at the same time. And I think that's the same case for a bartender as well. They're, you know, on a busy night, they're having to tend to, like, you know, a lot of people all at once. So I could see why that could be very stressful.
Yeah, absolutely. And the truck driver is also on this list as well, due to the fact that it's a sedentary job, long hours, day and night. So have you found same thing, that trucking can be very stressful as well from the people you've seen?
I would think so because, truck drivers, they're usually, first of all, they're away from their home. They're away from their families, and that in itself is stressful. And then they're having to be on the road for so many hours at once. And it absolutely is a sedentary job, especially, not being able to move around for a very long time. It's just sitting and driving. So that sounds very stressful to me.
All right, absolutely. And this also mentions medical personnel, medical industry, the medical profession, also has a lot of stress. It winds up on the list at number 5, and that brings up a lot of questions about, maybe working with staff, long hours, a lot of responsibility, say on the nurse's side and the doctor's side as well. Does that contribute to the stress factor for medical personnel?
For all medical personnel, physicians, nurses, all alike, we have odd hours. We have, there are people who are working at nighttime. Just the job itself is very stressful. You have people's lives in your hands.
How do you balance stress in your life? You're managing a major organization there, taking care of people. I know you like to do the ballroom dancing as a stress reliever and grand champion, by the way. I want to mention that, drivers. But, from that standpoint, do you meditate, relax, exercise? What do you do to balance stress?
Oh, yes, balancing stress is so important. You're right. Actually, dancing is one of my stress relief methods. I love dancing. It's exercise. It gets me moving. And the time that I spend, 1 or 2 hours a day of dancing, that 1 or 2 hours, my mind is completely free from everything else, So I encourage everybody to find something like that where your mind is completely off from your day-to-day stressors and in a healthy way. For me, it's dancing because it's also exercise.
All right, drivers, let me invite you on as well. This is your opportunity to join Dr. Fahmi Farah, one of North America's most recognizable names when it comes to cardiology. What do you do, ladies and gentlemen, to relieve stress out there on the road? You like to maybe walk. You like to maybe jog, ride a bike. I know a lot of you have got those mountain bikes that are on board that truck. I know some have got weights on that truck as well. I think one way to maybe alleviate some of the stress as far as you being a truck driver is turn off that phone. Just turn off that phone. Just leave it alone. And don't pick up any phone. Just let it go to voicemail. Doctor, that's a hard thing to do for many to turn off that phone because it seems like, what is that? We've got the FOMO aspect, the fear of missing out. We keep going back and forth to our phone over and over and over. Doesn't that also increase stress when you constantly got your face in the iPhone?
It does, and you're right. That is one of the major reasons why people are so stressed out nowadays, because they're just being absent from where they are at the moment. You go to a restaurant, with family, and half the family's on the iPhone, so that communication is lost. And, we're getting constant reports from the world, like stressful news and things like that. So, yeah, I do think that's a major source of stress.
And when you are counseling somebody that is undergoing some heart issues, is that one of the main things that you recommend for them to do, is find ways to de-stress? That might take a lot because somebody might have to make some sacrifices, but is that one of the first things you mentioned? Let's take the stress out of your life and think about you as the patient.
I do, as a matter of fact. I advise all my patients to detach themselves from their cellular devices or any electronic devices that, can be stressful, like from social media, from any of those things, and especially at nighttime.
Yes.
Our screen time and the amount of time we're spending on our cell phones is a reason why a lot of people have sleep disturbance, because it just messes with our sleep hygiene. A lot of us were guilty of taking that phone with us to bed, and we're just scrolling through, and that light, it keeps us up, and the news and everything that we're doing. So I tell my patients, avoid doing that. That way you'll get better sleep at night, and that's so important for your overall health and definitely your cardiovascular health.
All right, let's do this, Doctor. I'm going to break for the commercials. Dr. Fahmi Farah is on the line with us if you want to join. Let's hear from you. We got to do these commercial things. We don't want to get the boss stressed out. if we don't play it. So that's what we're going to do here. How do you take care of stress on the road? What do you like to do? Walk, jog, maybe sleep a little bit more. That's not a bad idea. If you got the time to do that, we'll talk about getting some more sleep as a way to alleviate stress. Back in a minute, SiriusXM 146, talking about the most stressful jobs out there today. And no doubt you can relate to a lot of this. The stress of the job of trucking can do a lot of things. I mean, really cause some cardiovascular issues, heart disease. It is a silent killer. And on board to talk about it, Dr. Fahmi Farah. Doctor, thank you very much for doing this. And, hey, I do want to get your website out where folks can read up on you and the great work you do, social media, and the phone number. So where can I go?
You can find me at www.drfahmifarah.com, also at www.bentleyheart.com, social media at Fahmi J. Farah on X and Instagram.
All right, outstanding. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me on the program. Now, I'm just going down the list. We mentioned medical. We mentioned truck driving, teaching, bartending. Now, the chef, a chef job has got to be, so, as what they're describing here, is one of the most stressful jobs that's out there today. And I would imagine that is so true because of the time pressure, the meals that have got to be made, got to be done right, that kind of a thing. Do you agree with that? Chef is on that list for being one of the most stressful jobs.
Oh, I can't even imagine how stressful it must be to be a chef. And yes, especially in today's world, like, you know, the expectations are so high, the time management, the quality, the enormous in the kitchen.
Oh, no question. Yeah, you don't want to get that meal order wrong. And can you imagine working for somebody like Gordon Ramsay, who gets real upset in the kitchen? Oh, man. What a fun show that is. But, you know, it can be a situation where you're working for somebody that's very, very much a demanding boss, somebody that wants a lot. They say you got to go here, do this, do that. That can really create some very problematic situations like the stress level. With an increase in stress, doctor, do you find that more and more people are going to be more susceptible to making mistakes, which could wind up being very costly, or in some cases could be deadly if not done right?
Oh, I do. You know, you brought up a very good point, like demanding jobs. I think the environment, the work environment you create at the workplace is so important for it to be healthy and not toxic. I think the boss or whoever the hierarchy is, they need to be understanding, and it needs to be a team environment where everybody can openly communicate and identify what the problems are, so that it's a team environment, it's a friendly environment, so that, you know, by doing that, you're reducing stress, you're reducing mistakes from happening, and you're also reducing burnout at the workplace. I think one of the key reasons why people get burned out is the environment is just not that great at workplace.
Well, absolutely. And they say that people don't leave jobs, they leave people. Is that accurate?
I think to some degree. I think, you know, like who you're working with is very important, because that's where you're spending the majority of your day. So you have to be happy at your workplace. But I don't think it's just the people alone. I think the job matters as well. You know, there are some really stressful jobs, as we just talked about, and sometimes it's just not doable for a lot of people. If the job itself is very demanding, if the job itself is requiring, like, you know, crazy hours, not enough time off. So I think the job can matter as well.
What about family life? Say that you've got a stressful family life. That could be very problematic as far as heart issues go. But if you go into an environment at work that's also maybe just as stressful, is that kind of a double combination of problems there with stress at home, and then you're bringing it into the work environment? How do you separate those, in other words?
I think home stress is definitely a major contributor to heart disease and diseases in general. And, like you're right, like at work, if the work is stressful, you're spending a lot of your time there, and then you're going home. If home is stressful, then gosh, where do you go? So finding that balance, at home, communication becomes so important with your significant other and your family members to be able to reduce and mitigate that stress, those stress factors, so that you can have a healthy, fulfilling life. I think that's very important.
Absolutely. I'm thinking that maybe if some have got that combination of stressful home life and then a stressful work life, they're going to be trying to find that bartender. Now, we don't recommend that, but, that's not a good way to go there. But it is something where I think people need to find outlets for that stress. Like you mentioned, Doctor, you love to ballroom dance. Many folks like to simply just maybe read a good book and just kind of escape there and maybe binge watch on television, but just getting away from the noise of the day. And certainly when you get ready to go to bed at night, you've got to try to alleviate that stress, turn off your brain, in other words, and just try to get a good night's sleep. And, Doctor, about 2 minutes left. Good idea for folks to maybe just kind of like decompress when they get ready to go to bed, to turn off that stress level. You mentioned that can maybe create some insomnia issues. How do you do that? How do you turn off your brain, in other words?
Every individual can have different sources to go to. You just have to find what you like and enjoy, what gives you relaxation in a healthy way, of course. I would not suggest going to alcohol or smoking.
No,
I would say, like you said, read a book, listen to music. Sometimes just taking yourself away from all things that stress you out, which could just mean some alone time. Just take a walk in nature. A lot of studies have shown that taking a walk in nature is very healthy for you, for your heart health and overall psychology as well. So I think just taking yourself away from those stress factors, giving yourself some you time, whatever that relaxation may be in a healthy way, is important.
Outstanding. Doctor, thank you very, very much for sharing your knowledge, and very much appreciate you. One more time, where can folks read up on what you're doing, the research, great literature on the website? Where can they go?
You can find me at www.drfahmifarah.com and on social media at Fahmi J. Farah on Instagram and X.
All right, I just noticed we got a quick question. We've only got about a minute. Big Fat Daddy in Wyoming. Real quick, what's your question for Dr. Farah?
Well, I've got a boss that loves to micromanage to the point that I need to ask what color when I need to take care of business. In fact, when I'm on the phone with somebody, I'll say, just a second, my headache's calling. What can I do?
Oh. Okay. Doctor, what do you think? Real quick, 30 seconds.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that could be very toxic. My suggestion would be definitely have an open communication conversation with that boss and set your expectations and your boundaries. I think boundaries are very healthy so that you can have a healthy life.
All right, very good. Thank you, BFT. Doctor, thank you. Let's do it again next week. That is Dr. Fahmi Farah.